Let's get started on our conversations on CARICOM. And to do so, of course, we always welcome Barbados Ambassador to CARICOM, His Excellency David Comissiong. Ambassador Comissiong, good morning.
Good morning, Pearson.
Again, a very busy schedule. We're looking ahead now. Barbados has just concluded chairmanship of CARICOM, and now we're passing it on to Jamaica. And so we're looking forward to the 49th regular meeting. What's the difference between the regular meeting and the intersessional meeting?
Yes, so this is the regular meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of CARICOM. This is where our prime ministers, this is their council, and this is the highest council, the highest body in the whole CARICOM structure. So typically, over the years, there have been two meetings of the Conference of Heads of Government. The major one is always in July, which coincides with the date of the founding of CARICOM, the 4th of July. And then in February, we have one that is slightly lesser in stature, known as the intersessional. So that's, midway between two major July conferences. However, when Prime Minister Motley came back on board in 2018, she said to the heads, look, in the 21st century era, a serious organization can't only be meeting twice a year. So with her guidance, the heads of government decided to have 6 conferences every year. 4 virtual conferences and still the 2 in person, the one in July and the one in February. And then even in between those 6 conferences, sometimes you have special or emergency virtual conferences. So since 2018, the meetings of the heads of government have really expanded. So it's at least 6 meetings now per year, 4 of which are virtual. But the big one is always the big in-person one in July. And CARICOM has really been in existence now for 57 years, because I would go back to 1968 when CARIFTA was established, because CARICOM is really just the evolution of CARIFTA. So CARIFTA evolved to CARICOM by 1973. But CARICOM is part of our reality now. Yes. Right? Sometimes I hear people talk as if CARICOM is the secretariat in Guyana. No, it is not. It is actually all of us. We are all CARICOM. Our prime ministers, our government ministers, our government officials, and we, the people. So we need to get that mindset right. When we think of CARICOM, don't think of the Secretary General in Guyana and the Secretary. All of us are CARICOM, and periodically, different levels of officials come together to have meetings. So this one coming up in Montego Bay, Jamaica, between the 6th and the 8th of this month. This is the main one, and this is where our heads of government will come together to transact some very serious business.
And so the very serious business, as you just phrased it, form that agenda. What are some of the items on the agenda? Can you share?
Well, it's a 25-item agenda. I can try to take you through. The first major item on the agenda is, as usual, the CARICOM single market and economy. And the main issue for the CSME right now is the free movement regime that we are putting into place. And I think what is going to happen in Jamaica is that all of the CARICOM countries are not going to move to full free movement
at the same time.
However, a couple of years ago, we made an amendment to the CARICOM Treaty, because usually these big decisions that are handled by the heads of government require unanimity.
Right.
But we found that was holding back progress. So we did something called the Protocol on Enhanced Cooperation, which says that in cases where everybody is not ready to move at the same time, but at least 3 member states are ready to move, that the Conference of Heads can give them the green light to go ahead. And so they can move and they can leave available when others are ready to join, that they can join. So I suspect that what is going to happen in Jamaica is that a grouping of member states, at minimum 3, will apply at the meeting to the heads for permission, just to move ahead with that group to the full free movement. I know Barbados is definitely in favor. I know Belize has already signaled that it is ready to go. So we will see what other member states come on board. So we are very likely to have a subgrouping of member states putting the full free movement in place coming out of this meeting in Jamaica. The other thing on the CSME is that even though we're moving to the full free movement, we still have the CARICOM skills national regime.
Yes.
And that is important because the countries that don't move to full free movement will have to still keep operating the skills national regime. And so a decision will be made at the meeting to add aviation professionals to the list of skills. So all of those people who work in the aviation sector, they should now be able to get their CARICOM skills certificate and have the right to work live and work right across the region. The region, yeah. Then we have a report from the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee on External Negotiations. Well, we have these different prime ministerial subcommittees where, we break up the prime ministers into smaller subcommittees to deal with different issues. So one subcommittee led by Jamaica deals with our external trade negotiations. And that committee has been grappling with Mr. Trump and his tariffs.
Yes.
And they have been trying to work out what is the best way we can respond as a region so that we minimize the damage. And they have been working with the CARICOM private sector organization, which is a relatively new body of the private sector that has come together to work with CARICOM and the Caribbean Development Bank. So they're going to be coming to give us their wisdom as to how we deal with these U.S. tariffs. Then, climate change and the climate finance agenda. This is a big issue for CARICOM. We are all small developing states on the front line of the climate crisis, and we are gearing up to go to COP30 in Belize later in the year. And so we have an institution, a CARICOM institution we call it the 5 Cs, the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center, which is headquartered in Belize. And typically they lead on climate change for CARICOM. So they're going to be, we're going to hear a report on how are we preparing for COP, what are our priorities, how do we deal with the fact that the US has pulled out of the Paris Agreement, what are the implications for the funding, the climate justice funding that we have been pursuing all of these years. So that's going to be a big one for us at the meeting. And then one of my favorites that we're going to be paying attention to is advancing the CARICOM Agri-Food Systems Agenda, prioritizing regional food and nutrition security. That's the famous 25 by 25 that we talk about. But why I say it is one of my favorites is because I think that we hit upon the right formula for achieving concrete progress in CARICOM. I love the idea that we target this thing. We set ourselves a goal. We're going to reduce the food import bill by 25% by the year 2025. Something very concrete. This is something to aim at. And then we set up the infrastructure to achieve that. We bring together this ministerial council of ministers of agriculture. We identify a champion, President of Guyana. And then the key to it all, not only do we have that champion, but then he puts his country's own Ministry of Agriculture almost like a secretariat for the project, so that you have this continuity and you have this laser-like focus on achieving it. And I think that has worked so well. You know, every country has a target to meet. And you know, we in Barb, we've had some setbacks. For example, when Beryl hit and virtually destroyed our fishing fleet and so forth. But I mean, some good news, some really good news coming out of Barbados recently, and I hope Barbadians are paying attention.
I want to look at the other concern for the region, which is physical and property security. Is that an agenda item?
Oh, most definitely. But just let me just to end off that point about the agriculture. We are about to open in Barbados a Barbados Institute of Food and Agriculture that is being constructed at the Hope in St. Lucie. That's your part of the world. And that's a collaboration with the government of China. And the University of the West Indies has constructed its agri-industrial park at Jukes in St. Thomas. So Barbados is really being poised to play a very big role in achieving that 25 by 25.
Okay.
But yes, security, physical security, security in relation to crime, that is going to be a big feature of this conference. As Barbadians might know, I mean, we are facing this situation with increasing incidents of violent crime, an increase in homicides. But I want Barbadians to know it is not only Barbados. It is actually a regional plague. It is a regional crisis. And in fact, it might seem strange to Barbadians because we are caught up in our own domestic situation. But Barbadians need to know that we are one of the least affected of the CARICOM countries. In fact, if we look at last year's homicide statistics, Barbados is actually number 10. You know, number one obviously is Haiti, but then you have 8 other countries ahead of Barbados. So Barbados is quite low down on the list. And the way you put together the list, you look at the number of homicides per 100,000
the capita
of your population. So anyhow, but it's going to be a big item on the agenda. In fact, at every heads of government conference, the heads determine upon a special overseas guest to invite. And this year, at this conference, the specially invited guest is none other than the Secretary General of Interpol. That's the International Police. I can try to pronounce his name for you. His Excellency Valdesi de Urquiza E. Silva Jr.
All of that.
So let me just stick with the Secretary General of Interpol.
Yes.
But so he is going to come. The heads are going to engage with him. And typically, security is always on the agenda. We have a CARICOM institution called IMPACTS, the Implementation Agency Mechanism for Crime and Security. It's headquartered in Trinidad, in Trinidad and Tobago, although it does have a sub-agency right here in Barbados. So IMPACTS is the CARICOM agency that is supposed to do all the analysis, to collect all the information, to help our governments have a better grip on crime challenges. But so this is always on the agenda, and but it tends to be dealt with in caucus. So this is not going to be dealt with in an open session. This is where there's a part of the meeting where the heads, plus either their Attorney General or their Minister of Foreign Affairs, they go into a closed session where they discuss really sensitive issues. So they're going to have that discussion in caucus with IMPACTS and with the Secretary General of Interpol. So yes, and then of course, while they're having that discussion about the crime situation, they will also discuss the situation in Haiti in caucus. That's done in caucus as well. And that's part of the security discussion too. So yes, so
Is health on the agenda as well? Because the region's health is absolutely critical.
health. No, not
Okay.
not a specific agenda item for this particular
Meeting.
meeting. No.
Okay.
But there are other. You have the caucus items, the very sensitive items. In addition to security and Haiti, you have the regional telecommunication strategy, where they're looking at the whole telecommunications sector in the Caribbean, and they have some important decisions to make. I won't go into that because the ones that are in caucus, we don't like to divulge too much. Financing and governance of the community. Border issues, well, that's a staple. The Venezuela, Guyana issue, the Belize, Guatemala issue, and then also in caucus, very intriguing. There's an item called enlargement of the community. And under enlargement of the community, number one, the development of a Caribbean community enlargement policy. So we have been, there a number of countries have been applying to become associate members of CARICOM, and even full members of CARICOM. So we recognize that, look, we have to have a more settled policy. How do we address these applications? What are the principles that should guide us in making a decision as to whether to agree to allow a country in? So that policy, the heads will be considering. It was already considered at the level of the foreign ministers, but now it's passed on to the heads. And then they will deal with actually three existing applications for associate membership. And we have applications from Colombia, the Dominican Republic, and French Guyana.
Literally our neighbors.
Yeah, and well, French Guyana doesn't surprise me. Martinique just came on board as an associate member, and so Colombia a little bit more unusual since it's such a large country. But anyhow, those are matters that the heads will be looking at. And I know our time is running out, so just then there are a number of items for information where this is where things are currently in progress. They're not ready yet for any particular decision, but the heads need to be informed as to how things are developing. Well, you mentioned one, CARIFESTA.
Yes.
So there is going to be a report during the conference on CARIFESTA 15, which will be held in Barbados in late August, and Barbados will be given a report on how things are going, but also regional transportation. What is the work being done on that? The CARICOM industrial policy that we discussed last week.
Yes.
So the work done on this CARICOM industrial strategy and policy that was done at the court head a couple of weeks ago in Jamaica, that is now being filtered up to the higher level of the heads of government. A regional population commission. CARICOM is in the process of establishing a regional population commission. This was something pushed by Prime Minister Motley. Barbados, we did our own Barbados Population Commission, and that effort was led by Dr. Roberta Clark, the daughter of the late Bobby Clark. And so Barbados recommended to CARICOM that it's not only Barbados facing this crisis of an aging population. In fact, it's the whole of CARICOM. And so we need to have a regional population commission. So Dr. Roberta Clark, she is also a key resource person helping CARICOM to put together that new regional population commission. And then finally, an enhanced role of youth in regional development. At the last intersessional meeting here in Barbados in February, one of the decisions made was that CARICOM needs to examine how we can involve our young people more organically in decision making, in not just at a regional level, but also at a national level. So we have the CARICOM Corps of Youth Ambassadors. So they were charged with going away and with collaborating with the CARICOM Secretariat to flesh out their ideas as to how young people could be more intimately involved in all of the CARICOM and the regional and the national processes. So they will be coming with their initial ideas, their initial report at this meeting. So I think that gives you
a broad view of what's happening next week, 6th to 8th in Jamaica. And so naturally we'll wait to hear the report from you when it all concludes. But I'm fascinated by the one with the youth in particular. To hear their points of view is something I think most of us in the region need to pay close attention to, because after all, they're the future. And that dovetails beautifully into the population commission as well, because while we're aging, we're also declining in childbirth across the region. And so to be able to hear from them what their contribution is, I think to the longevity of CARICOM would be quite an interesting session indeed. So to be the bird on the little fly on the wall would be so fascinating, but nonetheless, we shall wait to hear the report, Ambassador.
Yes, I'll be here to report. I won't be here next week because I'll be in Jamaica.
Yes.
But the week after, I'll be able to come and give a report.
Fascinating indeed. Thank you so much, sir.
My pleasure.
Barbados Ambassador to CARICOM, His Excellency David Comissiong, with a view of what is to be expected next week when the 49th regular heads of government meet in Jamaica, and we'll wait to hear the outcome in the following week indeed.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning.